All right, let's talk psychic gifts, timeline shifts, and creating our new reality. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tamerlee Rose. I'm the founder of the Beyond Human Method. I've been coaching people for 15 years, and my topic of expertise happens to be energy. So let's get into it. So the one thing that I notice when people are talking about their spiritual gifts, spiritual awakening, timeline shifts, creating a new reality, I notice that there's a lot of finger pointing. And I want to dispel this in this video, in this training, and I want to show you what will actually have you change realities, and it's not what you think. So it's not going to be the finger pointing. It's not going to be pointing out who's wrong and that you're right and that they're doing it badly, or that you're wrong and somebody else is right, and then we put somebody else on a pedestal. That perpetuates a particular reality. And the best way that I can describe it is like a container, okay? So your container, we could say your point of view, your perspective, your container is creating your reality. It is holding the space for you, whatever is happening around you. So it's kind of like, I'll give you a good example. I went through this with my kid. I'm also going to tell you how to change this, okay? But like last night, my kid was having a bit of an upset. She's a smarty. She's in the gifted program. She's in 3rd grade. And her meltdown last night had to do with like, they're just not challenging me. Mom, I'm not learning anything new. I mean, do you want to be that kid's teacher? Probably not. Okay. Because this is what you got to get. Her container is that they're not teaching her anything new. She's super smart. She's in the gifted, she just got in the gifted program. Okay. That's her container. So anything that shows up has to go into this container. And the thing that she says all the time recently is, I know, Mom. I know, Mom. So think about that just for a second. I know. Whenever you're around somebody who says, I know, their container is that they already know. There's nothing you can say that's actually going to change their perspective, their reality, or contribute to them because their container is already know. So all the information that they receive has to go into the container that they already know. My point is that with her, I can't just say, oh, babes, well, you don't know anything, because the I don't know anything is going in the container that she already knows. I can't just say like, oh, babes, why don't you focus on this X, Y, and Z? It's going to go into that she already knows. I actually have to change her container, her point of view, before I can engage in that conversation further. So this is the moment where you self-reflect and you go, how does that relate to me? Great question. Or how does that relate to what's happening in the world? Great question. So we all have a container that we're looking at life through, and the information that we're receiving has to go through the container. And the stronger the container, then what will happen is the world is just kind of like interacting with our container. It's law of attraction, but it's like matching the container's perspective and point of view. So what's happening right now is we wake up, we have the opportunity to change our perspective, to change our point of view, and to change the container and the lens with which we see the world. And that's the opportunity. So interacting, I've seen just lots of people interacting with comments on videos or interacting with my videos in general and saying things like, oh, well, the red needs to, they're finding out now, like they fucked around, now they're going to find out. I want you to look at what that container is. That's actually shaming somebody. That's telling, it's like you're in a fight and you're like, well, now you need to deal with your consequences. It's so funny, I can't even find that word for a minute. I know you can come for me in the comments, consequences. Every action has a reaction. That is like science. So that is actually what will happen. But if we're looking for world peace and we want to change the world, I don't think it's going to be for like punishing somebody for who they voted for, is my point of view. That's just my perspective and what I've seen. So we have an opportunity to change our container, to change how we look at things. Now, if you're looking at things, and for one more example, you could say like when you wake up in the morning, if you had a terrible night's sleep, you wake up and you kind of have a bad day because you had a terrible night's sleep. That's your container. Okay. It's you being in control of the container, you being in control of the perspective, you being in control of the energy is actually what's going to change the world, change you, and change the like the whole game. That's what we're all here to do. Now, the one thing that I do know is a lot of people, we hate change. So I have interviewed people who want to work with me, and they say to me straight out, like, I'm just going to wait till I hit rock bottom and then I'll come back around. Like, you don't actually want the change. You don't want it to be easy. You want to hit rock bottom. And that's how most of us function in the world, is we say we want change, but we don't want to do the work to change. And so change, like, we have to like really hit the ickies before we actually make the change. And we may be in part of that scenario right now. Frankly, this is the second term that Trump has taken office. So did we learn it the first go round? Doesn't seem like it. We seem like we're in Groundhog Day. So what is it we have to look at about ourselves, and what is it we have to look at about our reality? What is it we have to look at about our container and how we view things, and what do we have to change in order to change things? Because that's really how we're going to make a timeline shift. You see, the timelines are always shifting. So my personal timeline shifts every time I choose something, it shifts. Our collective timeline changes every time we as a collective shift. Timelines are always shifting, but this bigger timeline that people want to shift to, this higher level of consciousness, requires us to change our perspective, because the energy in the current perspective, the point of view in the container that we're looking from, isn't very kind. The second that we start pointing our fingers and we're blaming other people for like it's the Reds' fault and the Blues have the perspective and they need to find out, that energy in the field, I want you to feel into that. It doesn't feel good. And putting that energy into the field is going to create more of that. So I invite you to take a step back today and kind of look and go, where have I been functioning from, and where have I been coming from in my speaking, in my thinking, in my being? Because that's really what's going to change the energy. So if we want an expanded, higher conscious perspective and higher conscious experience on the planet, we have to do the work to attain the higher consciousness and the higher perspective. Now, lucky for you, I function in that most of the time. I'm very skilled. I've been doing this for 15 years at raising my perspective. So while yes, I know what's happening with Trump, and yes, I know what's happening with the administration, I also know what's happening on a global scale. I can also see all of the other pieces falling into place that are putting him in check very soon, and that's going to come to fruition. And while we don't like it on just a nationwide scale, on a global scale, this needed to happen in this way. Now, what is also very interesting is the second that that TikTok went down, all the Americans were removed from the app. And you had something really unique and yummy happening around the world, which is global talk and Euro talk and Commonwealth talk. And like I've been actively looking at, and I'm interested in being more connected. And because that is my container, I can find things like global talk and Euro talk and Commonwealth. We have lots of new perspectives where we are included as a globe, as a global community, rather than just our own personal righteous perspective over here. And I think that's really unique. The second thing that's happening is if you're paying attention, you'll notice a wave of university TikTok. Now this started with a university professor named Dr. Barlow, who does African American studies, and she had just a small group that she said, hey, I'm going to post your studies and I'm going to post things on TikTok for you, which blew up to a university online on TikTok. And I am not inserting myself over there at all. These are Black women, educating all of us on TikTok, and their magic is increasing. So my point is, if you get stuck in the rut of all the negative, you're gonna miss out on all the positive of the change that is already starting to happen. We don't have to wait for it to happen. We don't have to wait to experience it in that timeline. You can open up your eyes and start to experience it now. The more that you experience it and acknowledge it now, it becomes your container, and that container is activating and anchoring in the new timeline. And so that's what I really want to challenge you with today. I want to challenge you with looking at what is the good happening, what is the good coming, what is the good bubbling up, what are you noticing, and start to change your container so that we can have the new timeline now.